You know the drill around here. It is Testimony Tuesday at Woodsmore. And my gosh, I have got a fun one again for you today. I feel like I say that every week now, but it just keeps getting better. And I'm going to introduce Miss Kathy Kite to you here in just a second. Come on in, say hey to us. Right now, you are probably catching the replay. And so please use the chat to give Kathy and myself some words of encouragement. And maybe just maybe this will resonate with somebody, because it is all about finding the faith, sticking with your faith through it all, and realizing that the skeletons in your closet really mean absolutely nothing, and you truly can be reborn into a brand new person. And local author Kathy Kite is right here to share her whole story. And it is seriously like just sitting down with an old friend, and she's going to take us back, and I'm just going to sit back and listen. So Kathy Kite, who the heck are you?
Hello, good everybody. Thanks for having me, Shauna. Well, I'm a Harrisburg mole, I guess, born and raised. My mom and daddy, well, actually, my mom was from Columbia, but my dad was born and raised here. I'm down in Woodlandville. We grew up on a 800-acre farm out of 124, and just an old farm kid, barefoot, playing in the dirt. I always knew there was a God. I'm gonna get emotional, but I didn't understand who he was, other than he was bigger. I always loved this, to look at the clouds and, run in the fields, and just that's who I was as a kid. Then as I got a little bit older, my dad played in a band, so we started running honky tonks, and not always, but most of the time, when my dad played a gig, mom would go, and us girls would go, Maggie, my sister Maggie and I. And so we were raised in a very rough kind of environment as far as that goes. The oldest three kids were raised with parents that didn't drink. And then when those youngest three kids came, we were raised with parents that did. And so my oldest, Pam, Rick, and Edna are, they were raised with going to church down at Smith Chapel, and they were more familiar with, who God was and who Jesus was. I personally thought Jesus was like Santa Claus when I was little. Just that's who you said hi to on Easter, just like you said hi to Santa Claus on Christmas.
Yeah.
And I was almost a teenager, and actually Kara Douglas was the one who kind of told me who Jesus was. And then my sister Edna, and then my sister Pam, and brother Rick started kind of introducing me to him. And then through high school, I played music, and we played softball at Elm Tree, and so it was kind of a different, like you had kind of both worlds kind of picking at you at the same time. Because just because you go and drink beer at a bar and play baseball doesn't mean that you're not a Christian.
Yeah.
God hasn't have a a safe place in your heart. So it was hard for me to understand, to make that gesture between the two,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
because of the way I was raised when I was a kid, was either you were going to hell, or you were a Christian and you didn't drink, you didn't smoke, you didn't cuss, you didn't, like you were perfect. You had to be perfect to go to church. Well, I never felt perfect because I didn't live in a perfect world, so I wouldn't go to church. But then I got married, and we had kids, and I was working at Randy's Market in Pratersville. I kept driving past Oakland Christian Church, and it was like God was calling to me to come there. So I started going, and I loved it. And Ross Mutrix we started reading the Bible, and he was explaining things to me like Cain and Abel. And, I finally understood the gist of Adam, and Eve and Ishmael and all the different characters of the Bible. I was like, I get it. And then he introduced me to parables, and I love the parables of the Bible, And so I started taking my kids to church. Well, then, life got crazy, ended up getting a divorce. Then I got addicted. I met someone and went down a really dirty road, and addiction crept in on me, and I became a cocaine addict. And I was a cocaine addict for almost 10 years. And, but through it all, let me back up just a minute. Before my divorce, when my mother got sick, I started writing, because my dad used to always tell me stories all the time when I was a kid. And he was always telling stories about when he was a little boy growing up in Woodlandville or grandma and grandpa or Harrisburg. He used to tell me stories about that Harrisburg, this, that, and the other, the wagons and, the horses. And they would bring their horses to the, what was Price's, I guess there was like a Nicholson store. I don't know. He told me all these little stories. And so he was always a storyteller. And in 2007, the year after my mom died, I started writing a book. And it became my life source, kind of.
Yeah.
Because whenever things got bad and I was confused and there were moments I wanted to check out, I could always sit down and I found Abigail Gates in West Creek, Colorado, and they were my solids and they could live the life I dreamt of living. So they became my grounding. And then I, my sister called me and was like, Kathy Louise, God very clearly told me, my sister Pam that lives in California called me. She says, God very clearly told me this morning that I need to send you a ticket. You need to come to California. I was on drugs bad, Shauna, bad. And I'm ashamed to say it, but it is who I was. Before drugs, I was stuck up, felt I was a little better than everybody. I was very judgmental about everybody. If you had acne, oh, they're probably on drugs. That was my mentality. Very, very horrible person. But when you get on them and then you find yourself living in a dumpy trailer that has no plumbing and you have no food and you have no car and you're basically homeless and you're dirty and you have no food and you're like, I am Kathy Kite. My mom and dad, were good people. And, I have Christian, like you have that good and evil on your shoulder.
Yes.
And you have God saying, little girl, that is not who you're supposed to be. Maybe you need to go see your grandfather tree, which I'll explain in a minute. And then you have this one for going, nah, I just called the drug dealer. You just want some more drugs. And I never did anything bad, like steal or prostitute. I never did. I mean, I worked and I paid for my addictions, but still I was addicted. And Pam called me and said, God very clearly said to me, I need to send you a plane ticket. So the guy that I was with, they took me to the airport and he kissed me goodbye. And when I started to gate, I'm sorry, I wanted to turn and look behind me. God said, no. If you'll just believe in me and you walk in faith that I've got you, I will bless your world beyond your comprehension. And I said, okay, God. And I stepped onto the plane. I have addict since. He just took it away. I never had a craving. I never had a withdrawal. I literally just went to being Kathy Kite again.
Mm.
I got my brain together. I got my health back. I got my sense of pride back. And he has slowly showed me, and it's a process. I mean, every single day, I have to wake up and say, today I will walk in faith that God's got me. Because
Amen.
every day is a struggle out there, and you just got to stop and listen.
Amen.
And I have to listen for that little voice because sometimes we get so busy living, we forget to listen. And if I want to go right and that voice is saying go straight, then I have to go straight.
Mm.
The road might be bumpy and maybe it's not to the right. I got to go over those bumps because there's a purpose for it.
Yes.
And since I got, I walked onto the airplane, I went to California, and my sister, God love her heart, worked full time, 70 years old, still working full time. That gave me the opportunity to sit and write my books. And my sister Edna, who has an actual degree in literature, helped me with, because I flunked out of English bad. Me and Kathy Yaunt were like oil and water. God love her, rest in peace, Kathy. But my sister Edna taught me what, pronouns were and adjectives and that kind of thing. And so she helped me to tone and, be able to describe and bring what I had in here and put it on paper and put it into words. And that's a beautiful thing. So it was my Christian family, part of my family, blood family, that helped me at that point. And then I moved back home and I thought, you know what? So I went to work at H-Town, and of course Vicky Spry works there, and me and Vicky, of course, Kara and I went to school together, and I started going to Harrisburg Christian Church with Vicky and going to Monday night Bible study with Vicky and Kara and Christy and your mom. and I gave my life back over to the Lord, and I got rebaptized. And let me tell you something, Shauna. There was no glory like the glory of God in your life. I'm telling you, when I went under that water, I was scared. And I know that sounds maybe silly, but I thought, Lord, am I really ready? And I thought about Plum has a song called Lord, I'm Ready Now. And I listened to that song a lot because I am ready, and I do believe and I do walk in the faith that God's got to have me every minute because I still fall. And the one place on this earth that I've always felt closest to God was with my grandfather tree. And it is on the land that my son now owns, that was my dad's. And I will go there and I can sit under that tree. There it is right there. That's my son Homer. I can sit under that old Osage marker tree, and it's just like God comes and just fills my spirit. And it's like all of the hurt and the anger and the confusion and the what ifs, just they go. So long story short, I know I've been kind of long winded. I grew up thinking he was like Santa Claus, and then Jesus came to me and said, "Here I am."
Yeah.
But he said, "Walk in faith," and I heard it just like you and I are talking. And I remember kind of looking around the airport like, did anybody else hear that? If you just believe in me. But even through the addiction, when I would fall down, what would flash into my mind? My God, my
Yeah.
God, my stability, where it all began, how I was raised. I was raised with good morals. My mom and dad were good people. They made bad choices, like a lot.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's quickly go back real quick. We grew up, like you just said, fairly normal. Yeah. Maybe a little rough around the edges, but that was life. That was life. And that was fine. We grew up a little bit. We got married. We had kids and probably fairly good life so far. And then pieces, like a lot of people's story pieces, start to fall apart. And that's when you start to question and you start to wonder, and you try to find something that's comfortable, something that will take it all away. And for her, unfortunately, it became an addiction. Now, Kathy, I have a question for you because you said at this point you had kids. So how was that dealing with addiction in your house that had no plumbing? Where were the kids? How did that all unfold?
My kids were grown by the time. I mean, they weren't. I mean, Kelly was 17, almost 18, and Homer was 15, almost 16 when Willie and I divorced. And it's strange because to this day, we don't even know why we got divorced. How weird is that? Like, we were together for 22 years, and it's just like all of a sudden, it's like we just gave up. I
Wow.
tell you why.
That's a word.
I don't know that if he could. I mean, maybe he can. I don't know. We've never actually talked about it, but we are friends. I mean, we get along fine, and I'll love him to the day I die.
Yeah.
But I think I got tired. I know a lot of mine was because Mama got sick. She had a stroke. Mama got sick. And then right after my mom died, my dad had a stroke and he was sick. And I was working 2 jobs. And, Kelly was the football manager and Homer was playing football. And I was just running all the time. I gained like 60 pounds. I weighed like 232 pounds. I was unhealthy. I was exhausted. And I gave up.
Mm-hmm.
Gave up. That's on me. But my kids, my kids don't, even to this day, we're not estranged. Like, I talk to my kids, but it's not like most mothers with their children because I ran.
Yeah.
And when I got mixed into the drug scene, I stayed away from them because I didn't want them involved. I was ashamed. I
Shame.
knew wrong. I wasn't raised that way. I didn't raise them that way.
Yeah.
I raised the same way that, Willie and I both, and the other ones drank. I think we smoked when we first got together, whatever, but we were very adamant at dinner at the table at night and family time. And we raised our kids that way.
Mm-hmm.
Me to like, really, I went completely off the rails and people were like, "What? Kathy, what?" I don't even, I didn't. And so for me, it was just really out of character.
Yeah.
But now it's been 15 years, I guess. What's been 9 years I've been sober. And
Amen.
to have a good relationship with my children. And I was angry at first about it because I'm like, well, I'm clean. So I don't, what's the problem? But I had to stop and think about things from their perspective.
Yeah.
They were kids. I was the parent. I'm the one that was responsible for making sure their lives was good. And I failed them at that
Yeah.
point. But, tomorrow's a new day. And now every morning when I wake up and I walk in faith, I know that faith is that God's going to bring my children back and we're going to be a family again.
Amen. So we've talked a couple times about how a lot of these testimonies, it was almost like someone had to go to literal rock bottom. And then that's when you find your faith. That's where Jesus is sometimes, which sounds a little bit crazy, but it's because like he has to humble us in some way. So would you say that at the airport, was it train or airport? I already forgot. At the airport that day, like, was that truly your rock bottom when he spoke to you?
Absolutely. Because had I turned and looked at him, I would not have got on that plane.
Okay.
And I know it as well as I'm sitting here. But God, it's almost like God took my face and said,
Mm-hmm.
Lord, that's your past. That's done. I'm taking control now. I'm
Wow.
not, this is beyond you. This, and I'm not saying that the guy I was with was a bad person. He wasn't. He just was an addict. I mean, not all addicts are bad people. They're just
Sure.
addicts. Just such an evil, evil disease. I'm very blessed in the fact that I think I was more addicted to him than I had a big crush on him as a kid. And, what I'm saying? So when you run into an old boyfriend and you always liked them and they didn't really like you, but I'm saying that.
Yeah, it's lust. It's not love.
And then life turns out to be not what you want, what expected, And so I went down some really rough roads, and I thank God for him every day.
Yes.
Humbled me because now I'm not judgmental. I'm kind-hearted. I mean, I've always been a kind-hearted person, but now I'm very kind, and to the point that people take advantage of it a lot. But because I've been there, I want to help other people.
Yes.
I'm very quick to. I don't judge anyone.
Yeah. That's a word. You said something else earlier that I think is very important. When you had those skeletons in your closet and you were trying to hide them, the last thing that you thought about doing was entering the doors to a church. And why? Because you knew there would be judgment, or you thought there would be.
Right.
You knew that you weren't going to look the same as other people. You knew that what you were doing, how you were talking, who you were talking to, the way you were living was nothing like what those people possibly, this is what you might be thinking in those church pews.
And what's on? I don't mean to interrupt you, but what's crazy is, and I'm not just saying because I'm a member of Harrisburg Christian Church either, but I've been to a lot of different churches, a lot, trying to find my place. Only Harrisburg Christian Church did I find this. Open arms.
Yeah.
You don't even hardly know me. Like, I went to school with your mom and dad. They were a little bit older than me in school, but Vicky Spry and Kara Douglas and Shelley Perigo and, John. I mean, everybody was just open arms and it's okay. And we've got you. And, when my books came out, I had my first book signing at H-Town. That's how I met Amber Spry. The day I came home, that day in that picture was the day I met Amber Spry. Now I'm at her house doing this interview. She's one of my best friends in this whole world. Keeps blessing me, and I can't give him enough glory.
Yeah. And that you just brought the point home that, we feel like everyone's looking at us and judging us because of that thing we did or how we lived or whatever. And sometimes it was 5, 10, many years ago. And, if you are that person listening that you're just like, I don't go to church because I drink. I don't go to church because I cuss. I don't go to church because this is what I wear. I don't go to church because, my hair is nasty gray because I'm just an old country person.
Right.
That means nothing. And that's what Kathy is trying to say. That was not about your hair, by the way. But and there are churches, and like you just said, there are churches that you do feel that way. But when you find that home church, man, you just cannot wait to go every single Sunday, and it can change you.
And I started ringing the bell.
That's right, 10 a.m.
When I was a little girl, there's another little story, a little sidekick for you. My sisters lived right over here, around the corner from the church. And I would hear those bells ring on Sunday, and I didn't understand what they were. They were bells ringing. And I'm like, that's cool, because I love music. I'm such a music person. I do community theater. I love music. And my sister goes, well, honey, those are the church bells ringing. And I want to go to church. My sister-in-law, Kathy Lynn, and Debbie Drain now took me to Vacation Bible School with Kara Douglas and Sean Cochran. And I don't remember who all was in there, and I made this like mobile thing. And my
Yep.
did up until she died, that we made. And I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. But I remember that week of Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I like this place. I like the way this place feels. I didn't understand it all
Sure.
because being in that building to being to a bar,
Mm-hmm.
drunk, and it was a bad deal. But when I heard them church bells, I'm like, I want to go there one day. I want to know what that's about. So when I started going to Harrisburg Christian Church, I told John that story, and he goes, well, then you can start, because I guess you guys didn't ring the bell all the time.
No, we didn't.
Ring the bell every Sunday, even though I moved to Oklahoma. Johnny Spry, they started ringing the bell every Sunday.
Yeah.
Little kid out there that's living in not such a great life, that wants to search, that's seeking God, are searching for something that they know's out there they can't understand, that them bells, that bell will draw them to God.
Isn't that crazy? It means so much to you. And now you take that passion or, that history and you ring it for others. Okay. So we go to California and we're sitting there and we're changing, we're molding into a different person, and we're becoming a writer. We're becoming an author. And sometimes we don't know, like I talk about purpose a lot, like finding your purpose, finding your passion. And sometimes it looks nothing like what you thought. Like Kathy said, she barely maybe skimmed through English class.
No, this class stage because I got out of Kathy's class both times I took her.
I had to laugh about Kathy. I had Kathy on.
And I RIP her. You know what I'm saying? But we
Yes.
oh.
So we're sitting down. We're like, we're just going to do this thing. We're going to become an author. We're going to write this book. And with the sisters' help, we were able to kind of, like you said, live through Abby, or almost, it's kind of like acting. It's kind of like reading, like you get out of your own reality and you almost dive into someone's reality. So tell us a little bit about maybe the characters in the book, and we'll talk about in the end how you can find her books and where you can find all of that. But how did you kind of maybe then live through the characters in your book? Tell us more.
Okay. Well, I was working in dermatology when the whole thing came about, and I had, back then there was a thing called MySpace, and I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember MySpace, but I had met a gentleman named Val Kilmer on MySpace, and of course everybody was like, "That's not really him." I didn't care whether it was really him or not. All I know is him and I became really good friends on MySpace, and so whether it was actually him or not, I don't know, but anyway, so I was telling him these dreams that I kept having. And he's like, you need to write a book. And back then it's when I think he was doing Heat. Like it was during, no, because it was in the, anyway, I can't remember what he was filming at the time. But anyway, he said, I said, well, I'll write it and you can star in it. And he was like, okay. So it just was a joke. So then, I mean, we did become friends eventually. But anyway, so the main character in the book was this, I mean, I don't know if I should tell what the plot is, but, Adam Davis was just this guy who just wanted to be anonymous. He just wanted to live a normal life. And he was a celebrity, and he was hiding because he wanted to live a normal life. And Abigail Gates was this young girl who had a birth defect on her face that her mother kept her home so that she wouldn't be made fun of or mistreated in life, because she was trying to protect her. So she lived through books. She read all the time up until she was like 12. And then she decided to defy her mother and sneak out of the house. Of course, she got made fun of. And then she went back into seclusion until she was forced, when her mom passed away, to go into the community. Well, then I have Mr. Frank, who, by the way, my dad, Frank Kite, is the one who named, go figure.
Okay.
Very strong man's name that would be like an old Italian, and that old Italian guy goes, well, name him Frank. And I said, well, okay, Daddy. But so Abigail was this innocent girl who was made fun of. And I always felt like in school I was made fun of. Because of the way my mom and dad took us to bars. Kids were very cruel. We were I can't speak for Maggie. Her and I've talked about it, but I won't speak on her behalf. But I've had kids make comments about me being, bar trash and that kind of thing. And kids are cruel. Let's just face it, they are. I don't think they mean to be. They don't know. And sometimes they hear adults talking and they repeat things they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Um, so I was kind of but then at the same time, everybody was my friend. As odd as that is to say, I can't really specify any one person that was mean to me. A lot of the high schoolers were mean to me, but not your mom and dad.
Okay.
No, your mom and dad I'm telling you, your mom and I was in love with your mom, not like in a lesbian. She's absolutely so beautiful. But anyway, she was always just such a lady. But um, so yeah, I think Abigail kind of represented me, and then Adam kind of represented kind of the Val thing, even though it wasn't him. But and then I had the idea of Billy, who's Abigail's best friend. I still don't know who Billy is. Like I've sat and thought, I'm like, who is Billy? I think Billy's the make believe person that I always wish I had in my life.
Oh, wow.
I really do. And because I've had other people say, well, who are the characters based on? And I'm like, well, really nobody. But if I like Aunt Josie is so my Aunt Mary Alice.
Okay.
Her whole attitude and and so I just kind of took characters out of my life from my past, some stuff that my dad had told me and pulled from like stories he had told me, stories Howard Combs told me,
Oh, wow.
from Howard Combs even, um, just through my lifetime. And I remember sitting in Pam's office because she let me use her office and making my leaderboards. And if you don't know what that is, you take a piece of paper, or I took a piece of poster board and little pieces of paper, and I wrote like Abigail Gates, and I put it on there. And then Abigail Gates was Emily Gates, and her father was Peter Gates. And I actually have genealogy on every single character. I have 15 leaderboards for Supernova.
That's cool.
I do research. I get on YouTube or I go to the library and I read books and I find out about how to coal mine, what it entails, you know, like everything. And acting, like because he's an actor, that's where Bless His Heart Val came in a lot because I'm like, so what would it be called if X, Y, and Z? And he's like, oh yeah, you would da 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 da, So it was definitely a lot of research, but that's
Okay.
what came about. I just, and I got lost in it, and I talk about God in it, and it was my freedom to finally say, because Emily Gates is a very, very spiritual woman. Because I'm a true believer that there's a difference between religious and spiritual. Yeah.
Yes.
And I am a Bible reader, and I follow Christ, but I'm a very spiritual person because I do believe in the heavens and the earth and the trees, and everything was put here for us to survive, and everything's as God's purpose.
I love that.
All of the way I feel inside, and I was able to express everything I've ever felt, hurt and pain. There's a chapter where it deals with this, Abigail almost gets raped. These are real things that happen. Addiction is in my books. Cruelty and plane crashes, and there's lots of stuff in these 3 books.
Yeah.
So,
And so here's her first 2 books, which you can find on Amazon, right?
and Barnes and Noble.
And in Barnes and Noble. I mean, like, she's legit, you guys. We have an author on the page, okay? So there's the first 2 you can find. And then she does have the 3rd one coming out. And here's the cover, which is super exciting. And I think what I love the most is basically what you're saying is that your addiction in the past was your escape.
Amen.
And once we were saved and God was like, nope, this is now going to be the narrow path because the narrow path is what's going to get us there. This is what I want you to take. And if you do this, you will find success and you will find a whole new life.
Right.
And when she took that path, then we now have 3 books that are now her escape, that are now her freedom and not the addiction in the past. It's amazing.
He definitely took the addiction and replaced it with words and love.
There you go.
And affection. And I have 4 more books that I'm working on, and I have poetry, and I play music, and I have so much positive in my life, and it's because of my Christ family. It is because of my birth family.
Yeah.
The 6 children, and my mom and dad, anyone who knew my mom and dad knew that both of them were the hardest of workers. My daddy was not very educated, but my mother was self-educated. She would be so proud And I think about that all the time because she was such a reader, and she beat it in our heads to read. Of course, she beat my head and didn't do any good because I wouldn't read. But my ex-husband actually told me on March 26th was the 18th year Mama has been gone, and he said, I was thinking about the fact that today was the day Haley died, and I thought, man, Haley, for a girl that couldn't read and wouldn't read, she's written books. What do you think of that?
Yeah, take that.
Right. And I love it. It's who I am. I'm very proud of it. And I'm proud to say I'm proud of myself. And it's nice to look in the mirror and see God instead of being ashamed to look in the mirror.
Yes, I feel like every one of these testimonies has the exact same story, and it is finding an escape and then it's identity. And
Yes.
when we can find our purpose and identity, which you have now flipped your identity and you see it in Christ, like we're good.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I can't say enough about it all. I mean, just when I sit, actually, I've had a couple people in my family that have said, you should write a story about where you were and what you went through and where you are now. And I said, no, maybe someday God will have me do that, but I am God driven.
Yeah.
I have dreams, Shauna, and God will show me what he wants this book to say. And I get up and I write it.
Wow.
I always give glory and say that God and I are writing, Jesus and I are writing the story together.
Yes.
He has just used different characters in my lifetime to make it home to me, so I'm more comfortable writing it. But I don't know if you get the chance to watch my lives on Facebook, but it's emotional sometimes when I'm reading because it's so tender to me. And
Yes.
I would be in California writing it, and like I said, my poor sister Pam, she would be laying on the couch in the living room, and I would call her on the phone from the office next door, like the room, and she would lay there on speakerphone, and I'd read to her what I wrote. She'd say, yeah, but blah blah blah. I'm not real. I don't feel that. I'm like, okay, so I'd hang up and I'd go in, I'd redo it. And I'd call her back.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, yes, girl, that's perfect. So
That's cool.
that I'm like, oh yeah, I would call her in the next room so she didn't have to get up.
So heart and soul for sure was put into these books. I encourage you to go grab one. Lots of locals have them. Again, here it is. If you want to screenshot it or just remember Supernova and Supernova 2, you can get on Amazon currently. And then you got to read those first, but then 3 is on its way. So before we wrap up, you said we also found acting, we found music. Now we've got other escapes. So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, I was asked to play Kitty in a Gunsmoke play, which that's the group of us at the with the backdrop there in Columbia at the Scottish Rites building. I'm a big karaoke person, and this gentleman that had a karaoke thing, I had went and sang with them one night, and Danny Roberts called him and said, "My kitty quits. I need someone. Who do you know that's got a good, strong female voice that's got personality that would be willing to step in as Kitty?" And he said, "I got the perfect person." So he called me and he said, "Hey, how would you like to play Miss Kitty?" And I said, "What?" He goes, "How would you like to play Miss Kitty in a play? It's a musical." And I'm like, "Heck yeah, that would be fun." So I went and I love it. But, since I moved to Oklahoma, I'm not here to be involved as much. But actually, that's why I'm home.
Yeah.
Because he had written a second episode, if you will. And he called me. He goes, "Would you be willing to come home and play Kitty again?" And I'm like, "Well, depends." I mean, I moved down there in November with my brother John, and here I am. I came up here, and Amber and them were working in the store, and I decided to extend my stay. But yeah, I came up here, and here's what's funny is I had my Kitty costume in my car. All my clothes were here at Amber's. Well, I went and helped a buddy of mine in his shop, and we lost track of time.
Oh.
And, oh my God, I got to do a gig in Columbia because I told Danny I would help him. I left Sturgeon and went straight to Columbia, dirty, covered in grease and my clothes were at Amber's. I'm like, oh my God. So I put my Miss Kitty costume on and went into a nursing home and sang. But it worked. Loved it. So
I have a picture of that, but I don't think I uploaded it. I'm trying to put it up here real quick because it's cute, just so you can get a visual.
Because I just, my whole thing is I'm an entertainer. I've always been an entertainer. I'm a clown. I love to laugh. I'm a true believer that people who laugh a lot live longer. I just believe. Yeah,
Yes.
Kitty and Katie Russell. It was funny because I told the people this year, this time at the 2 o'clock matinee, because usually I dye my hair red, and I didn't do it. And I said, I'm sorry that you guys are going to get the extra large gray headed kitty. And one of the in the audience goes, we all age, honey. It's fine.
That's right. She's aged a little.
Aged a little. She, even at 58 or 60, she looked better than I do at 54 because my hair is gray. And it's
Again, there's another escape, right? Like, man, when we're feeling down or like we just need a purpose, we just got to find something that can kind of be our escape. Yes.
yes. And I don't know, I haven't known you that much, but if anybody knows anything about Kathy Kite, I'm fun.
Yes.
I I've always been a glass half full person, except for that few years where I became very, I tried to commit suicide, and I ended up in mid-mo when my dad died, because my dad and I were so close, and I think that was probably the beginning of my end, like
Yeah.
getting to that point where I was just done.
Sure.
Like, my mom died, I got divorced, then my dad died, then I went to California, and the guy I was with was killed tragically by a drunk driver. So I just death, 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 death,
Yeah.
And so when God said, just believe in me, it doesn't take anything. It's really easy, people. I mean, it's
Right.
to just walk in faith. And, when it's raining, just know it's not because the cloud, it's a gray sky and it's gloomy. It's because God needs his plants to have water. There's
That's right.
always a positive before there's a negative. Always.
I love it. I love it so much.
Right. I had a friend of mine go, well, then why do babies get sick? Well, I don't know that. I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a bigger story to that. I mean, that's tragic. When young people pass away, it's tragic. But every tragedy has some kind of there's something we may not ever know. You know.
You're
So,
absolutely right. There's some people saying some fun things in the comments to you too. Miss Kayla's here. I interviewed her. Was that just last week? Says that we sometimes get so busy living that we forget to listen. That was words from you.
yes.
We go to church because we are broken, not because we are perfect. That's a word.
And
The perfect people, I mean, don't get me wrong, we all can grow, right? But the true believers, they're not really the ones that necessarily need to be in church. Now they are there because, like you said, it was them that held your hand and led you, right? But
right.
it is the broken that we should feel okay to just come broken.
Right. And it's the people who, even after every day, I work on me every day. Everybody has to work on themselves every single day, Shauna.
Yep.
But since I found, not that God was ever lost, I don't mean that, but since he became the center of my world, everything is God or, Jesus, and then whatever else.
Yes.
Focus. When I see someone else that's struggling, it's just, I may not have seen it before, but it's like God opened my eyes to, hey, your brother or sister needs help. Just give them some kind words, or
Yep.
give a word of encouragement, because that's what they need today. It's almost like God has a way of saying, okay, so now you have graduated to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Someone graduate with you, and then you can move on. And I feel like we do these steps until we graduate from our earthly bodies into our heavenly bodies.
That's a good visual. Yeah, just being a disciple, and that can look spreading the gospel and being a disciple can look so many different ways. But
Could
I
be
like.
more, absolutely. But
Mhm.
Shauna, you, Miss Lady, are a blessing to so many people, and I just want to give you kudos for a minute, because you are a shining star. I mean, you really are. I don't think that people give you enough credit, because I I I can't say enough good things about you. I brag about you all the time. I'm like, I know Shauna Woods.
Well, stop. I try to stay humble, so you're going to need to quit that.
And that's the best thing, is you're so humble.
Thank you. I do appreciate. And again, like, this is now my purpose, right? This is my mission.
And it's
So when you
beautiful.
find that, it's good. Leslie Bradshaw says hi, Kathy, too. She was watching. All right, loves. Well, if you were at all blessed by this, if you wouldn't mind sharing this out and letting other people on your Facebook or YouTube seeing this, we are on both, and we appreciate you being here. We just like this is it. Something said today touched you in some way, I hope and I pray, that just gets you thinking, right? Gets you maybe on the narrow path, choosing to go to church because, oh, wait, you're saying broken people can go to church and that's okay. Like it gave you the invitation. So thanks for listening. We appreciate you. And Kathy, I know Tuesday at 10 a.m. can kind of be crazy. So appreciate your time.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you all for tuning in and listening. And may God bless each and every one of you.
Yes. Miss Candy says, you ladies have a blessed week. You too, Miss Candy. Thanks for watching. Go get yourselves your books. Kathy, hang on tight, and we will talk to you very soon. God bless you guys.